This is Mrs. Robertson's cluster math class, and today we are in Chapter 4, Lesson 2, Compare and Order Rational Numbers, located on page 271. All right, a new term that you're not familiar with are rational numbers. We talked briefly about it a couple weeks ago. We're going to go into more detail at this time about rational numbers. A rational number is a number that can be expressed as a ratio of two integers written as a fraction, in which the denominator is not zero. The Venn diagram below shows that the number 2 can be called many things. It is a whole number, integer, and a rational number. The number -1 and 4 repeating, which we would put a line over that, is only a rational number. It is not an integer, kids. It's a rational number. Common fractions, terminating and repeating decimals, percents, and integers are all rational numbers. Okay. So another way that you could write that with a line over it, it is a repeating decimal, okay? So that keeps it a rational number. Write the numbers from the number bank on the diagram. So right now I want you to take these numbers and put them where you think they belong in the Venn diagram. Eight tenths would go in the rational numbers. 2 and 2/10 repeating will be a rational number. -1 is an integer. 1 is a whole number. And 1 2/3 is a rational number. Those are all different examples of rational numbers. Now, rational numbers includes all the integers and whole numbers. So 1 2/3 is not a whole number, and 1 2/3 is not an integer. Integers are not expressed as fractions. Those would be rational numbers. Not all numbers are rational numbers. The Greek letter pi represents the non-terminating and non-repeating number whose first few digits are 3 and 1400ths, and the ... indicates that it continues. This number is an irrational number, so that's an example of an irrational number. It says use the internet to search for the digits of pi. Describe what you find. We're not going to take the time out to do that right now, but it goes past 1 million digits. I know that. And we're not going to take time to go out that far on the value of pi. Okay, so let's turn to page 272. And we're going to talk about how to compare rational numbers. A common denominator is a common multiple of the denominators of two or more fractions. The least common denominator, or LCD, is the LCM, or the least common multiple of the denominators. You're going to see the term LCM used more often than LCD. On the 6th grade I-Learn test, they will use the term LCM. You can use the LCD to compare fractions. Let's just put least common multiple is a better term to use. You can also use a number line. All right, so let's see what they have here. Fill in the circle with less than, greater than, or equal to make -1 5/6 and -1 1/6 a true sentence. Well, on the number line, here they have -1 1/6. Here's -1 5/6. -1 5/6 is smaller than -1 1/6. So it is less than. Remember, the number on the left is always smaller than the number on the right. Do this problem to find out. So right now I want you to place the numbers on the number line where they would be located. Okay, it's cut up into ninths. That will be -5 1/9, 2 ninths, 3 ninths, 4 ninths, 5 ninths, 6 ninths, 7 ninths, 8 ninths, and -9 ninths would be a -6. So it should be, look something like this on your paper. Any questions? Okay, let's go on to the next one. Example 2. Fill in the circle with less than, greater than, or equal to make 7/12 and 8/18 a true sentence. Here we have to find our least common multiple. Now, one way to find your least common multiple is you take the largest digit. Okay, between an 18 and a 12, 18 is the largest one. They show it another way as far as how they found their least common multiple. I list the multiples of 18. 18 times 1 is 18. Will 12 divide 18? No. So then I take 18 times 2. 18 times 2 is 36. Will 12 divide 36? Yes. So your least common multiple is 36. And just to prove it to you, I'll list the multiples of 12, and they both have a 36. So 12 times what is 36? 12 times 3 is 36. 7 times 3 is 21. So you have 21 36. 18 times what is 36? 18 times 2 is 36. And then 8 times 2 is 16. Now you can compare them. 21 36 is greater than 16 36. Now, I want you to find the least common multiple on these problems here and then compare them. Okay, so the answers you should have for this are, your common denominator is 18. So you have 15/18 is greater than 14/18. Any questions on how to do that problem? All right, if we look at the next problem, between 5 and 50, your least common multiple is 50. 10/50 is greater than 7/50. Any questions on that problem? No. On the next one, your least common multiple between a 16 and a 10 will be an 80. And -45 is greater than a -56, because in the negative world, -56 is to the left. Any questions? All right, let's go on to the next page, 273. On page 273, Mr. Hung's class, or in his class, 20% of the students own roller shoes. In Mrs. Trevino's class, 5 out of 29 students own roller shoes. In which class does a greater fraction of students own roller shoes? Now, I don't know if you remember back in the day, they banned them from school, those roller shoes where they had the little wheelies on them and you'd lean back. You called them wheelies, not roller shoes. But they were banned, and I don't think you can buy them in the stores anymore, but that's what this problem's about. So, express each number as a decimal and then compare. Kids, to change 20% to a decimal, you move a percent to a decimal. You move the decimal point 2 places left. 2 places left. Oh, there. So to go from a percent to a decimal, you move the decimal point 2 places to the left. So 20% is 0.2. To change a fraction to a decimal, you divide. You can either get the denominator over 100 or divide. 5 divided by 29 is 0.1724. So when you move it over to the decimal point 2 places, it's going to be 17%. Okay? So 20% is greater than 17%. Or 20% is greater than 5/29. Any questions on how to change a fraction to a decimal? You just divide. It's 5, the top number goes in the box, 29 goes behind it, you add your decimal point and a 0, and you just keep on dividing, you get 0.1724. Here, you just only have to really divide 2 places since you're comparing. All right, now I want you to do letter E. In a second period class, 37 5/10% of the students like to bowl. In a fifth period class, 12 out of 29 students like to bowl. In which class does a greater fraction of the students like to bowl? Let me unfreeze this. So right away, when you get your first number, it'll go into it 0.4 times. So you can stop because 4/10 is larger than 3/10, correct? So the answer is 12 out of 29 is greater, which would be fifth period. Any questions on comparing those? Order rational numbers. It says you can order rational numbers using place value. So let's look at what example 4 is about. Order these numbers from least to greatest. Okay, what are the challenges that we have here? It says line up the decimal points and compare using place value. Here, you can always add a 0. In this one, we're going to the thousands place to compare because the 3's are alike, the 1 is alike, the 4, we're going to add a 0. 0 is smaller than a 1, so this number is going to be smaller than that number. So the order of the numbers from least to greatest is 3.14, then it's pi, then it's 3.44, and then 3.4 repeating. So if you just compare them that way, here are the rest, 3.44. I wish they would have put them, I'm just going to put this one underneath, 3.440 and 3.444. You can tell that these two are larger just because of the 4, and then this one is the largest because that one has a 0. So when you do the comparison, just be very careful. Now I would like for you to do letter F. Put those in order from least to greatest. So when we compare these, you can tell that the smallest one is 1/5. 1/5 is 20 hundredths. The next to the smallest is 21 hundredths. The next to the smallest is 23%. And the largest is 1/4. Now notice how when I put the answer on the line, I use the original way that the number was written in this number set. But I changed them all to decimals whenever I was comparing. Any questions? Okay, let's go to page 274 and look at example 5. In example 5, Nolan is the quarterback on the football team. He completed 67% of his passes in the first game. He completed 64 hundredths, 3/5, and 69% of his passes in the next 3 games. List Nolan's completed passing numbers from least to greatest. Here, they changed them all to decimals, and then you put them in order. 3/5 is only 6/10, second, third, and fourth. Any questions? That's pretty easy. Okay, let's go ahead then and do the guided practice, and then I'll tell you what your homework assignment is going to be. So on page 274, this one, they already have the common denominator. It says use the number line if necessary. I really don't think it's necessary. -4/5 is less than -1/5. If you did do it on the number line, that's -1/5, -2/5, -3/5, -4/5. They're not exactly the same spacing, but remember, the number on the left is always the smaller value than the number on the right. Okay, here we have to find our common denominator. What's our common denominator between a 4 and an 8? Yes, an 8. 3/4 is the same thing as 6/8. So 1 6/8 is greater than 1 5/8. Any questions on that?
No.
All right. Number 3, Elliot and Shanna are both soccer goalies. Elliot saves 3 goals out of 4. Shanna saves 7 goals out of 11. Who has the better average? Well, 3/4 equals the decimal point 0.75, which is 75%. You should have this fraction memorized. 3/4 is the same thing as 0.75. Now, 7 out of 11 you probably don't have memorized. So that will be 7 divided by 11. Add a decimal point. It goes into it 6 times. Subtract. I can stop right there because I know that 0.6 is smaller than a 0.7, correct? So who has the better average? Elliot does. Elliot. And then you can say 70.75 is greater than 0.6, and we could stop right there. Once you get to a number that's different, you can stop. So I don't want you to think you have to keep on dividing till it terminates. You don't. Number 4, the length of 4 insects are 2/100ths of an inch, 1/8 of an inch, 1/10 of an inch, and 2/3 of an inch. List the lengths in inches from least to greatest. Okay, so I need 1 divided by 8. We'll go into that once, subtract, add a 0, bring it down. 8 goes into 20 twice. Subtract, add a 0, bring it down. It goes into that 5 times. So that is 0.125. 2/3, 2 divided by 3 is 6/10 repeating. Okay, so list the lengths from least to greatest. Well, if I have here, I like to line them up vertically, 0.02, 0.125, 0.1, and 0.6 repeating. It's easy to see the smallest is this one, 0.02, that's the smallest. Then it's 1/10. Then it's 0.125. That is 1/8 of an inch. So I use 1/8 because 1/8 is 0.125, and the largest is 2/3. Any questions? All right, so the question here, how can you compare 2 fractions? What are some ways you can compare fractions? There are a couple of ways. Yes?
You can make them both into percentages.
You can change them to a percent. Change both to a percent. Is there another way? Yes?
Number line.
Huh?
Number line.
You can use a number line. What's another thing we can do? Yes. Change them to a decimal. And there's one other thing you could do. Yes. You can divide, which is what you do to a decimal. You can find a fraction with a common denominator. Common denominators. Fraction with common denominators. All right, any questions? Okay, then this is what we're going to do for homework. I want you to do page 275. Do all on page 275. Let's turn the page. On page 276, do 11 to 14. I'm not going to make you write a real story problem for number 15 today. Do 11 to 14. And then on page 277, do all. Now you have about 28 minutes to do about 20 problems. So you may go ahead and work on these. Be very careful. And I will be giving you your test back in just a little bit.